What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's project, which is not really a project, it's more of a maintenance repair type thing. The yellow SSR is back in my driveway. The owner drove it to a doctor's appointment, wouldn't start after he left, or when he got done with his appointment, wouldn't start, just clicks really hard. Truck was towed here, so we're going to take a look at it. What I've found so far, I've only had a few minutes to look at it, but we have good voltage at the battery, we got good voltage up at the engine. All the fuses are good, and there's not a whole lot of draw on the starter system when you turn the key. So right now I'm kind of leaning toward it being a starter, and I figured, you know, this is going to be easy. 2 bolts, 2 wires, wrestle it out, it's good to go. Well, yes, that's all true, but the way this truck is, it's kind of caged up in there. So from what I've read on the internet about this and some of the forums I've seen, it's pretty much pull the wheel and pull the inner fender well out of the passenger side, and then that gives you access to it. And I don't know how much of a pain it's going to be with the long tube headers that are on this thing, but we're going to figure it out, and I'm going to take you along for the ride on this thing. So stick with me, and we'll get this thing set up and going. So we got the inner fender liner removed along with our wheel, and honestly, the header's in the way. So this thing is buried down under there somewhere. I don't even know if we can see that, but anyway, but up underneath is kind of a, well, it's a cage to get this thing out. So anyway, I hope I don't have to pull that header out, but you never know, we may have to. So I've read that you are able to pull the main starter bolts and the wiring and stuff like that, and move a bracket and drop the transmission lines out of the way a little bit to give you a little bit more room and see if we can fish it out. So that's what I'm fixing to go try. So wish me luck, and we'll see what happens. Well, it's still a dragon starter. All right, so as you can tell, we have a header on the ground, but holy God, it made so much more room right here. So yeah, if you have long tube headers on your SSR, pull that header. It'll make your life tremendously easy. The starter is out. I bench tested it. It wasn't throwing, and then all of a sudden it broke itself loose. So I am going to recommend a starter on this because I don't want him to get hung up and stuck out in the middle of nowhere by himself. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you do it. This is not an easy project. Nothing on this truck has ever been an easy project, but yeah, I definitely think going through the fender well is easier. Now, I think if this thing had factory manifolds, it may have been a lot easier from the word go. But once you get that starter out of place, even breaking that bracket loose for the transmission lines, there is no room. The starter hits the motor mount and everything else you can find underneath there. So yeah, definitely think about taking that damn passenger manifold off. Especially if you have a header. Take the header off. It's just 10 times easier. So anyway, I'm going to talk to him, see what he wants to do about it, and get a new starter. Try to get this thing put in, and then we'll go out, get it put back together, and go out and drive around for a while. So in the process of making this video, I've posted some pictures and things on Facebook, some of the social media groups, about this starter removal and install. And people have been asking, why'd you pull the header? What all do you have to do? So I was going to give you kind of a side-by-side comparison of the OBX header that is on this SSR versus the stock manifold and pipe that was on it from the factory. So as you can see, there is pretty much the difference between the two. What you run into is where the starter is. The starter sits kind of behind these primaries, whereas on the factory unit, you would have access to the starter much, well, I don't know how much access, but much more access than the OBX header. So the good news is about the OBX header, what I really liked about these headers when I installed them, they really just install very nicely. You don't have to bend stuff and shove and hammer and anything like that. They just fall into place basically. And essentially that's how these things came out. I pulled the dipstick tube, loosened up the manifold bolts, removed them out of the way, and I did have to jack the truck up a little bit more just to get the clearance, but they literally just fall out of the truck when they're not attached. So if you really are looking for headers for this Chevy SSR platform, I highly recommend the OBX. So far, they've been really good. I think these things have been on here for about a year. I believe they are 304 stainless. They still look good. They still sound good. And, you know, so I mean, that's definitely something you should look into if you want to do headers on these trucks. But anyway, I just wanted people to see kind of the difference between what a long tube looks like versus what the factory manifold looks like. And, you know, and kind of why I ended up having to pull that thing out, because if you have long tubes on this SSR, I really do not think you can physically remove the starter from the truck. I got it loose. I actually got it spun 180 degrees, but there's just so much stuff up in that cradle area that it just will not fall out. So anyway, that's kind of the reason why I did that. I'll show you some more of the videos later on. Like once you get the liner removed and the header removed, you have all the room in the world to put that starter in and wire it up, bolt it in, everything like that. And I'll get some more pictures and a few more videos as this project goes along. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of clear that up because like I said, I had some people on Facebook asking about what all is required to do. So anyway, guys, we're going to continue this on when we get the starter and we'll get it put back together. All right, guys, it's the next day. We have the new starter in our hands. I did show you all the difference between the long tube headers and kind of the factory manifold and the difference and what it takes to get the starter out of those two. Here's our new starter. This is just a O'Reilly's brand new non-reman starter. Supposedly everything's new in this thing, so we're gonna get this installed. So here's your two mounting bolts that bolt to the block. Our main 12-volt power to the solenoid and our trigger for the solenoid. That's that smaller wire that's on there. So we're gonna get set up. We're gonna get this thing thrown in, and hopefully we're gonna be driving this thing here in a little bit. So stick around and I'm gonna get started on it. So as you can look in here, here's this plastic cover piece. There is a 10mm headed bolt right there. Take that off. That helps get the starter out, but make sure you put that back in before you try to toss the starter back in there. As you can see, the starter's bolted up in place. Now all I got to do is just run my wires and that part of it will be done. Alright, so the starter is officially bolted in where it needs to be. This red, if I reach it, this red sleeve right here, this is some heat sleeve that I had purchased for another project I did a couple years ago. I think it's made by Mr. Gasket, but it has a really high temperature resistance. With the header being right there, real close to that, I think that's going to help out some things. So anyway, but yeah, the starter is officially bolted and wired up in place. So I've got to put one bracket on for the transmission lines and then fish the headers on up in there, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I kind of lied to everybody. The passenger side header has to come in through the top. It came out from the bottom, but the starter wasn't in place. With the starter in place, this thing just does not have enough room to come up. So I had to go back to my old video when I installed the headers on this and figure out how I did it, because I completely forgot, but it is going through the top on the passenger side. So here's what we're looking at. So I've pulled the overflow bottle off, got it out of the way. It just mounts to a bolt right there. But now I've got a lot of room, so let's see if we can fish that header in there. No tube sensor. It's in. That was so much easier. Alright, so the truck's back together. We are going to go take it for a little test drive and see how it responds and see how it acts. Make sure we don't have any other issues. And we will go from there. I don't really need to test drive this thing, but I just kind of like it. So we'll give her a spin and see what she does. Still drives as good as I remember it. Other people curious about the exhaust on this thing. I'm running 65 mile an hour right now, and this has the OBX long tube off-road headers, which means there's no catalytic converters. Has a Y pipe, and it feeds back into a MagnaFlow single in dual out that he had put on this thing, and you know, doesn't really drone. It's really quiet in here, but sounds really good, nice and mellow, and it's just not terribly obnoxious loud. So, you know, that's always a plus for this thing. So anyway, I think I'm gonna go out and make a rip on this thing and see what it does, and we'll see how this thing actually performs. So stick around. All right, we're gonna do a pull in this thing with my draggy and see what comes up. So here we go. Alrighty, well, we're safe and sound back in the neighborhood, and tried to do the draggy and didn't work out right. I still need to fine tune that thing some more, but it shows that I ran like a 1502 in that thing, and probably could have done better, except for I kind of ran into a law enforcement official, and I decided I needed to be somewhere else. So we're gonna go and hide out for a while, and that'll probably go ahead and bring this video to a close. So anyway, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me, watching me get dirty and try to change out a starter on this thing. It is definitely not a easy project to do on one of these vehicles, on like a Silverado or something like that, but it can be done. It can be done without a lift. I did have to pull the passenger side header and then put that back in. But all in all, starter is pretty straightforward. There's two bolts that hold it in place. You got your main power wire and you got your solenoid wire there. Pull the inner fender wire, or inner fender liner out, and pull the passenger front tire off, and it gives you a little bit better access than what you would have from underneath. So anyway, y'all, if y'all are enjoying this, like, subscribe, and we'll catch y'all later on. Y'all have a good one. See ya.